Hi class, Mrs. Calvi here. Quick review on slope-intercept form. I'm going to go over identifying the slope, identifying your y-intercept, converting an equation into slope-intercept form, and then also graphing using slope-intercept form and graphing when they give you a point and the slope. All right, so this is slope-intercept form, y is equal to mx plus b. Don't forget the m is your slope, so whatever is in front of your x is considered your slope. Your b is your y-intercept. So if I had y is equal to 3x plus 4, and the directions told you to identify the slope and the y-intercept, okay, so you would tell me that your slope, which is m, is 3, and your y-intercept is, in this case, a positive 4. All right. Now remember, in order to identify your slope and your y-intercept, your equation has to be in slope-intercept form. So if it is not, you need to convert it into slope-intercept form. So if I had the following equation, let's say I had y is equal to 3/4 x minus 6. And the directions told you to identify your slope and your y-intercept. Here, your slope is 3/4, and your y-intercept is -6. Remember, you always have to take the sign that is in front of your y-intercept. That goes along with it. So basically, you're boxing this in, and that is your y-intercept. All right, so now I'm going to give you an equation that's not in slope-intercept form, and I'm going to show you, remind you how to convert it. Okay, so let's say I have this equation here, x is equal to -6y plus 9. So I need to get it into slope-intercept form. So my y has to be on one side, everything else has to be on the other. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract this 9 to get it to the other side. And I'm actually going to rewrite this. You guys know we want the y typically on the left side, so I'm going to take this -6y. I am going to start that on the left side. And then here, I always want my x before my y-intercept. And there is not, I don't have a sign in front of my x, so I know it's going to be positive. So I'm going to write x and then -9. Well, it's great. I have my y on the left side, but I still have a -6 with it. My y needs to be just a +1. So in order to get rid of this -6, this is multiplication. I have to do the opposite, which is dividing. Now, one thing you're going to want to do is, I don't have a number in front of this x. I'm going to put 1 there just to help me out, to make it a little bit easier. So I am going to divide all of my numbers by -6. Okay, so now these cancel, and I finally have my y by itself, a 1y. So this ends up being y is equal to -1/6 x. Now here you have to know your integer rules. A negative divided by a negative is going to give us a positive. So in that case, I'm going to put a plus sign here. And then 9/6, you can simplify that down. That would be 3/2. So now I converted it into slope-intercept form, and now I can identify my slope and my y-intercept. So here, my slope is equal to -1/6, and my y-intercept is 3/2, or if you were to actually convert that into a mixed number, you can do that as well, and put that as your y-intercept. All right, so let's try graphing. Let's practice graphing a little bit. So hopefully you understand converting an equation into slope-intercept form. You want your 1y on the left side, everything else to the right. Remember here, in order for me to get rid of this -6, I had to divide all of the numbers that I see by -6. This x did not have a number in front of it. I put the 1 there so I don't forget. Most students, if you don't put that 1 there, you'll divide the -9 by -6, but then you'll forget this, and that's important. You need to know that. Okay, so let's practice graphing for a little bit. Okay, so the first problem I'm going to give you is they're giving me the slope and the ordered pair or the coordinate, and the directions will be to graph using this information. So if you remember, we always start with the coordinate that they give us. So we're going to plot 2, 3, and then use our rise and run from our slope in order to graph our second point. So let's go to the coordinate plane. So I am going to plot 2, 3. Remember, I always start at my origin, my x, which is this, and then my y. My x tells me to go left or right. My y tells me to go up or down. Well, my x is a positive, so I'm going right to positive 2. My y is a positive, so I'm going to go up, and I'm going up to 3, and I'm plotting that point. So I plotted the coordinate they gave me, which was 2, 3. And now I'm going to use my rise and run to plot my second point. Now, remember, rise over run. They gave me a whole number here, but I can always put it over 1. So now I have a -4 over 1. Remember, I always said associate the negative with the numerator, because then you're always running right. So I'm going to go back to the point that I plotted, which is 2, 3. Now, because it's a -4, I'm going down 4 units. I'm not going down to the number -4. I'm going down 4 units, and then I'm running right 1 unit. So 1, 2, 3, 4 units, running right 1 unit, plotting a point. Let's make that red, just to make it consistent. So 1, 2, 3, 4, running right 1. So now I told you earlier that it's always better to have a lot more points because that makes your line more accurate. So I'm going to go down 4 again and write 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, write 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, right 1. I want more points up here, so I'm going to do just the opposite. I'm going to go up 4 and left 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, left 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, left 1. And that's good enough. I have enough points that I can have a pretty accurate line. And I would go ahead and actually, you would use a straight edge if you had paper. Go all the way through, arrows at each end. So now, looking at this line that I graphed, if I scan from left to right, it's coming down. So that tells me that this is a negative slope. Well, I know it should be negative because my m is -4. So if I, again, had graphed this and I had a line going in this direction, this blue line is a positive slope. Well, according to the slope they gave me, it shouldn't be positive. So if you ended up graphing a positive slope, that's a red flag. You did something wrong. Double check. Okay, so this is if they give you the slope and they give you the coordinate. You plot the coordinate, use your rise and run to find your second point to graph your line. Now I'm going to review graphing when they give you an equation and using slope-intercept form. Okay, so I have an equation. It's already in slope-intercept form, so I don't need to convert it into slope-intercept form. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify my y-intercept, box it in. That's going to be 0.0, -5. Remember, you always take the sign with the number. And then I'm going to use my slope, my rise and my run, to plot my second point. So remember, this is a negative. You're going to associate that with the numerator. So plot my first ordered pair, which is the 0, -5. So I'm starting at my origin. So my x is a 0. My x tells me to go left or right. Well, I'm not going left or right. I'm staying at 0. Okay, this is the hardest part for students to understand. I'm not moving for my x, so I stay. I'm not moving left. I'm not moving right. Now my -5 tells me to go down, so I'm going down to -5 and I'm plotting my point. All right, this point landed on my y-axis. I'm now going to use my rise and my run. Well, remember, this negative is being associated with my numerator, so that's a -1. So from this point, I'm going down 1 unit, and I'm running right 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, plot a point. I want more points. Down 1, right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I want another point up in this area, so I'm going to do just the opposite. I'm going to go up 1 unit, left 4 units. Plot a point. And then once you have a good amount of points, that'll give you a pretty accurate line. you can connect and put arrows at each end. Well, scanning this from left to right, I see that this line that I graphed is going down to the right, so that should be a negative slope, which it should be because my slope in my equation is negative. All right, so let's practice converting an equation into slope-intercept form and then graphing. Okay, so I have an equation here, 5y is equal to negative 10x minus 35. Now, it's almost in slope-intercept form, but remember, my y has to be a 1y, and currently it's a 5y. So I need to get rid of this 5 in order for it to become a 1. So I'm going to divide. In order for me to get rid of it and for it to become a 1, I need to divide by 5. Whatever I do on the left side of my equal sign, I have to do to everything on the right side of my equal sign, all of the numbers. So divide all of my numbers by 5. These 5's cancel. I end up getting y is equal to, this is where you have to be careful with your signs, a negative divided by a positive is going to give me a negative. Now 10 divided by 5 gives me 2. Drop down my x. Again, a negative divided by a positive is a negative, so always figure out your sign first. 35 divided by 5 is equal to 7. So now I have it in slope-intercept form. I just need to identify, I'm going to box in my y-intercept, which is the negative 7. I'm going to write that ordered pair, which is 0, negative 7. All right. So I'm going to identify my slope. My m is negative 2. And the point that I'm going to start with, my y-intercept is 0, negative 7. Okay. So I'm going to erase some of this just so I have some space. And let's see if that's enough space. All right, so I'm going to be starting with plotting my y-intercept, 0, negative 7, going to my origin, 0, 0. So my x tells me to go left or right. Well, I'm not going left, I'm not going right, I'm staying at 0. Now my negative 7 tells me to go down to negative 7, plot a point. So I plotted a point. Oh, let's change the color just so it's easier to see. So again, stay at 0, go down to negative 7, plot a point. Now I'm going to use my rise and run. So they're telling me my slope is negative 2. I'm going to put that over 1, and it's a negative, so that tells me I'm going to go down 2 units, right 1 unit, plot a point. Down 2 units, right 1 unit, plot a point. I want more points up here. I'm going to do just the opposite. I'm going to go up 2 units, left 1, plot a point. Up 2 units, left 1, plot a point. You can then go ahead, once you have a few lines, you would graph on paper again. You would use a straight edge all the way through with arrows on each end. Well, this slope is going down to the right, so it's negative, and as it should be because they're telling us our m is negative. Okay, so I hope this was a good review, and I will talk to you soon.